And welcome back to room 303, and we continue now in our Unit 4 poetry work. I'm with you on page 748, 749 and following. And in this last collection, we will be comparing literary works. We're going to be looking at Walt Whitman's I Hear America Singing, which is a text that we will study again in our junior year. We're going to look at 3 haiku poems out of the Japanese tradition from a couple of really influential poets in the Japanese haiku tradition of Basho and Chijo. And then we will look at Alice Walker's text, Women, and then finally Shakespeare's sonnet number 30. Read with me on page 748, comparing forms of lyric poetry. These are notes you want to be taking now at 2B. Lyric poetry has a musical quality that expresses the thoughts and feelings of a speaker. It does not tell a complete story, but it does describe an emotion or a mood, often by using vivid imagery. A lyric poem is relatively short and produces a single effect, so write that down. It's short and it looks to try to produce a single effect. Poets can use a variety of lyric forms or structures to explore topics and themes and create different effects. We're going to look at 3. Take a look. The sonnet, we've seen it before already. A 14-line poem, usually written in iambic pentameter and often rhymes. 2 common sonnet types are the Italian, or Petrarchian, and the English, or Shakespearean sonnet. Put a note to yourself that we will come back in our senior year to study more closely these ideas as well. The haiku is a classical Japanese form of poetry. Haiku is an unrhymed verse form arranged in 3 lines. You want to write this down so when we look at it you already have a sense of it. 3 lines of 5, 7, and 5 syllables. So 5, 7, 5 is the haiku formation of syllables. All right? The author of a haiku often uses a striking image from nature to convey a strong emotion. And put a note to yourself that we will be working in translation for these poems, okay, these haiku. Finally, free verse poem does not allow or does not follow a regular pattern of rhythm or rhyme. The poet may use sound and rhythmic devices in even rhyme, but not in any kind of regular pattern. Each of the following poems depicts one speaker's thoughts. As you read, consider how the poet's choice of a particular lyric form adds to the poem's meaning. And then I want you to look at this chart and use this chart and the other information on this page to help you understand how each poem's structure enhances its message. All right? We'll be looking at the formatting. For example, in a Shakespearean sonnet, the final couplet, the 3 quatrains or 4-line stanzas, and the rhyme scheme for the poem. All right, we're going to turn now to the first of these, the great Walt Whitman. I'm with you on 749. Just look at the biography information quickly. And again, as I've said about Frost, I give full lectures on Walt Whitman in my junior folder on LearnStrong.net. You don't have to wait until your junior year to go and find those lectures and watch some of that stuff. If, for example, you really like the poetry of Walt Whitman. 1819 to 1892 are his dates. American poet Walt Whitman celebrated individual freedom. Write that down. He published his first book of poetry, Leaves of Grass, in 1855 at his own expense, and now Leaves of Grass is known as a very influential volume in American literature. Some have argued that it is the most important single work of poetry in the American tradition. He went through a series of republishings of Leaves of Grass, and we call the 1892 the deathbed edition when he died in 1892. One of the most famous poems in that collection is a poem called I Hear America Singing. Now, I've already given a lecture on this poem, and it's posted there in my junior folder on Learn Strong. I'm going to focus here in our freshman analysis on some of the ideas that are maybe most rudimentary to understanding this poem. Let's say 3 things really quickly in your notes before we read this poem. 1, Walt Whitman wrote in a time when America was beginning to identify itself as different from every other country, especially in Europe. Okay? That is to say, Whitman was part of the American spirit of individualism. Number 2, Whitman was a huge lover of music, and especially the opera. Okay? And so he would often say that America was a great poem or a great song. Okay? Finally, number 3. Whitman was very interested in how America was made up of Americans. Now, I know that sounds intuitive, like, oh, well, of course, I mean, yeah, Japan is made up of Japanese. But for Whitman, there was something fundamental about what that meant. He saw America as this amazing country of immigrants, all of these different kinds of people cohabitating. De Tocqueville talked about it in his Democracy in America as a melting pot. And for Whitman, he was very interested in the idea that America is made up of all different kinds of people, and yet each one of them is significantly important because we were this democracy, or attempting to be, this democracy that valued every, now we'll use the word, voice. So write that down. Whitman will argue every voice matters. So he writes a really famous poem that becomes a really famous poem in American thought because he's going to argue that America is made up of all different kinds of voices. Now, as we read at level 1, I simply want you to jot down all the different kinds of voices that are mentioned, okay? And then I also want you to jot down, and we'll have this conversation, the voices that aren't mentioned, okay? Now later, the great poet Langston Hughes, we've studied him a bit already in Dream Deferred and Dreams. In our junior year, we will study a famous poem called I, Too, T-O-O. And I've already given a lecture on this in the junior folder. After you study this poem, I definitely recommend that at 3A, you go and take a look at that poem, because that will address what is noticeably absent from I Hear America Singing. There's no referencing here to certain groups of people. And of course, namely the black or the African American or the Negro slave, as they would have been referred to back during Whitman's time. None of that is mentioned in this poem. And yet what is mentioned in this poem, really important. All right, here we go. Follow along. I Hear America Singing, Walt Whitman.
I Hear America Singing by Walt Whitman. I hear America singing, the varied carols I hear. Those of mechanics, each one singing his as it should be, blithe and strong. The carpenter singing his as he measures his plank or beam. The mason singing his as he makes ready for work or leaves off work. The boatman singing what belongs to him in his boat. The deckhand singing on the steamboat deck. The shoemaker singing as he sits on his bench. The hatter singing as he stands. The woodcutter's song. The plowboy's on his way in the morning, or at noon intermission, or at sundown. The delicious singing of the mother, or of the young wife at work, or of the girls sewing or washing. Each singing what belongs to him or her and to none else. The day what belongs to the day. At night, the party of young fellows, robust, friendly, singing with open mouths their strong, melodious songs.
Let's go ahead and go to the end really quickly. Notice the language. Strong, melodious songs. This will be in many ways Whitman's saying something about America. America is two things. It is a nation of voices singing, and they are strong. And this is huge for Walt Whitman. I'll say this in other lectures if you wish to study them in your junior year with me. This notion that America is this really strong place, this place where people want to say what they think. It's funny how often when we have foreign exchange students who come to study at World High School, one of the things they'll always say about us is that we're very loud. I remember that we had a Japanese student who studied for a year with us, and she kind of talked like this, and she was very polite. And when I asked her early on, what are your thoughts about Americans? She said, "You're all very loud. You talk loud, you act loud, you're very loud people." Well, Whitman would say, yeah, we are. That's our way. By the way, we've already seen Carl Sandburg in his treatment of Lincoln. Sandburg was a great poet, and he wrote a really famous poem about Chicago, and he called Chicago the city of the big shoulders. The shouting, the singing was also mentioned there as well. Let's go back now, and let's take a look. We have, at most people's count, at least 12 different types of voices that are referenced. At level 1, let's just go ahead and list them so that we've got them and we'll begin to think about them. Notice these are varied carols. In other words, everybody has their own voice. Their own unique voice will be to none other. We'll hear at line 9, right? You got a mechanic working blithe and strong. Interesting, he would begin the poem with the word strong and finish with the word strong. You got the carpenter, right, measuring his planks. You got the mason, right, working as he makes ready for work or leaves off. You've got the boatman on his boat. You've got the deckhand singing on the steam deck. You got the shoemaker and the hat maker. You got the woodcutter. You got the plowboy. You got the singing of the mother, the young wife, and the girl. This is significant because Whitman will include in his poetry often the marginalized. And so, for example, the fact that he even includes women in his poetry and equates them as equal with all of the other male voices, that is huge. That is significant as well. Notice each singing what belongs to him or her and to none else. The uniqueness of the voice. Let's write that down. The day, what belongs to the day. And then finally the last group, the young fellows, the young men who are robust and friendly, singing with open mouths their strong melodious songs. Let's go to 2A really quickly. Themes, messages. Major themes, messages. 1. America is a country of varied carols and voices. We're all different, and that's what makes us amazing. To try to somehow make us all the same, for Whitman, would somehow reduce America. Number 2, the celebration of strength is incredibly important here as well. We are a nation of people who are confident in our voice. Whatever it is we're going to do it with confidence. A contemporary of Whitman's was Ralph Waldo Emerson, and in one of his famous essays, Self-Reliance, he talked a lot about whatever it is you're going to do it and say it. Don't worry about being contradicted. The foolish consistency is a hobgoblin of little minds and statesmen, he says, right? Finally, number 3, each of us has to find our own song, our own carol, our own way of working. Notice the brilliance of an idea that when you're working, you're singing. I mean, just let that idea kind of seep in here already. When you're working, you're singing. Your work should be your joy. Your work should be your expression of yourself. When you read, let's jump to 3A for a second, the great biography of Booker T. Washington, great American, up from slavery. He's given an opportunity for a job. He needs a job. And the guy says, sweep the floor, and he leaves. And Booker T. Washington says in his autobiography, I swept the floor. But I looked at it and I said, I know I can do it better. And so he swept the floor a second time. And then one more time he looked at the floor and said, I know I can do it better. And by the time he gets done, when the guy walks in, the guy says, that is an amazing job. You got a job here. That notion that we are somehow defined by not just the work we do, but how well we do that work and with what attitude we do that work. That is to say, singing while we work. It's an amazing idea, right? And for those of you who grew up with that old movie, Mary Poppins, that tells the story about how a woman teaches those 2 young children how it's funny when you start doing a job you really don't like, if you sing a song while you're doing it, or you turn it into a game, all of a sudden it starts to become an amazing kind of experience. At 2B, let's just point out a couple of things. Did you see all the repetitions? Over and over again, the word, the, and then an identification. The carpenter, the mason, the boatman. Notice how many times the word singing is used over and over again. This repetition, and that's the what is it, but how does it work part? Notice it starts to turn this poem into a lyric melody, right? And in fact, some people have actually turned this into a song that can be sung. You can actually easily sing these lines, okay? For the rappers and the lovers of rap in the house, you're already starting to see some of the important roots of rap. The idea that poetry can already begin to sound so rhythmic that when you begin to recite it out loud, remember these poems are to be recited out loud, we said, all of a sudden it starts to have a certain kind of rhythm to it that's quite remarkable. I hear America singing the very carols I hear. It's a different kind of understanding of rhythm, but Walt Whitman definitely wanting to reproduce natural speech patterns, he said when he was publishing his poetry in Leaves of Grass. At level 3A, What is for you a text that celebrates singing, that says singing is amazing and you should enjoy it? Or, at the ironic level, for the Monty Python fans in the house, no singing. You can play both sides of that game. Obviously, at 3A, you want to write down, for sure you want to write down Walt Whitman's Leaves of Grass, and be reminded that this is one poem of hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of poems in Leaves of Grass. I hope maybe the study of one of these will lead you to the study of others of his poems. Finally, at 3B, this is an interesting question. Let's ask it for yourself personally. Are you a singer? It's funny, I once had a freshman that said, it's funny you asked that question. When I was a kid, I sang all the time, everywhere I went. And then one time somebody told me that I have a crummy voice, and so I don't sing anymore when the radio's playing or when I'm listening to my tunes. I don't sing like I once did. Why not sing? Even if you can't do it well, because singing somehow defines your sense of joy. Which is another 3B question. Are you a person who is joy-filled? And if you're not, maybe ask the question, why? What is it about your life that has reduced your joy and is no longer allowing you to be the happy person that maybe you once were? Well, Whitman will challenge you, as will I, to not only sing, but to hear other Americans singing and celebrate their voices as well. Thank you.